Hello everyone and welcome to your NARSA weekly update for the week commencing Monday the 3rd of June 2024. As I do every other month, it turns into a new month. I say, where did the time go? Where does the time go? Indeed, we're now in the planning stages for season 24-25 when we are sure to win at least a treble under the wonderful Philippe Clement. I'm kind of getting back into thinking that he might be just exactly what we need after a disappointing end to last season. It's Gary here again, of course, and well, you know what? I was assuming that we were going to have a bit of a quiet week in terms of Rangers, as it typically is at the end of a season, successful or otherwise. And then we're treated to some pretty significant things happening at the club. Woofed, as they say. We had the news last week that Zeb Jacobs, the academy director, was leaving. And I didn't actually realise, as I was reading his kind of exit article, I guess you could call it, on the website, that he'd been there at the club for 3 years. That's 3 years since Craig Mulholland had left. That's incredible how time genuinely flies. And then we had the bigger news that CEO James Gisgrove, oh God's sake, Gary. Right, you can probably hear I've still got a little bit of a head cold remaining from last week. People have been messaging me from all over the world saying hero, and I don't know how you do it, you persevere, I wish I could be like you. I'm just me, but I'll get back to the content now. James Bisgrove, with a B, left the club last week, and I was certainly very, very surprised. Not that I would ever get any heads up about any of that sort of stuff. It was still quite surprising. I mean, he was in the role for, what was that, I guess formally 10 months, because he started, I think it was on the 1st of July last year, and that's not a long time in a position like that to be able to, implement and then affect meaningful change. And if you look at that from a club perspective overall, and I've been talking about this sort of stuff for literally years now, in the last, you could even say, 3 or 4 years, maybe even leading over to 5 years, we've had significant turnover in our chairman and our managing director, CEO. Managing director when Stuart Robertson was there, CEO, of course they changed it to when James took over last year. Sporting director, a director of football, whatever the titles were over the years. Managers, of course, we've all lived that, and that just honestly, in any business, in any facet of industry across the entire world, just is not sustainable. Absolutely not sustainable if you genuinely want to build for and maintain long-term success. Continuity, succession, what if scenario, what if planning, scenario analysis, and all sorts of stuff like that are the genuine cornerstones of leading any successful organisation. And we always think that the club are doing stuff like that in the background. You're going to get the odd surprise, and it feels like, I have no idea genuinely, but it feels like this particular move for James Bisgrove did come up as a bit of a surprise. It wasn't in the offing, as they say, so the club are fairly much in reactive mode right now, it feels like. But that's what good, successful organisations seem to have. They do have that continuity. They do have those succession conversations. And we just don't seem to have that much of a grasp on the basics of things in the club. I'm saying that as an outsider, observing from the outside to the inside. So, as I say, my qualification here is that I genuinely don't know. And sometimes we kind of only see what we need to see or we want to see, or they allow us to see, and they being the board on this occasion, of course. And I think now is honestly a time that we need our chairman, or our executive chairman, as he's now in the role of, to come out and honestly, folks, just say some stuff. Just tell us something. He is very, very quiet. We've all heard John Bennett. He's a very, very good speaker, and obviously has done very well for himself in the business world. But I just don't see him. We never see him. The last prevalent chairman that we had, of course, was Dave King, and he came out and he was out regularly, and he told us things very matter of fact, and he told us things very, very often as well. So you got to a spot where you just started to get used to that kind of comfort zone, where you're kind of like, Dave will tell us at some point when Dave has something to say, Dave will say it, and then it went very quiet with Mr. Park, and it's been even quieter, if we could even get that, with Mr. Bennett now. And I don't even care if he doesn't have answers to any pressing questions. Like, just come out and say some stuff about Rangers, about where we're at, give us a wee bit of honesty, a wee bit of openness about the stuff that you can share, and kind of treat us like adults, because it is a very prestigious position, and we know it's a very important position, and it's a position that we genuinely as fans look up to, and we look to for guidance, for information, for advice, for a kind of a pulse, if you like, of how the club are doing and what the club are doing. And when there's silence, you know what we do, and this is just a worldwide human trait, it's not just for the west of Scotland. We make it up. We just make stuff up when we don't have any information. And the stuff that we make up, I'm just going to give you a news flash here, it's never positive. It's never positive. You're kind of like, oh, maybe it's not as bad as we think. Or your mind goes completely to the other side and you start to make up stuff about, I don't know, a lack of finances, a lack of direction, infighting, like whatever else it is you could make up. I'm not going to entertain any of that sort of stuff. But in lieu of absolute radio silence, we need something. Articles on the website and snippets and sound bites on our social media is not enough for significant situations like this. I think the article that explained James's departure from the club and what's going to be in place suffices for now. But set something up. It doesn't have to be earth-shattering or groundbreaking, and you don't need to talk to us just when things are going well, Mr. Bennett. Come out and just give us some tidbits of what do you see the next 2 months being. That's what we care about for right now. And what do you see the next season being? What changes are we implementing to give ourselves the best opportunity to succeed next year and move on from there? We're not going to hold you to that. We're going to refer back to it, of course, but we're not going to say you said, you promised, because they would never come out and promise stuff like that anyway. They would just come out and say, this is what I thought, this is what the target was, this is what our plan was, this is what our intention is going to be. And then we just kind of use that as a little bit of a measuring stick and we move forward from there. But as I say, in lieu of nothing else, it's just avoid. And I don't mean avoid as in he's avoiding us. I mean avoid as in avoid of any sort of semblance of quality information coming from the club. So Mr. Bennett, if you're listening, I know you're probably a keen listener to the NARSA Weekly Update podcast. It would be great to hear from you and just get a wee bit of an idea of what's going on inside the boardroom to give us a wee bit of hope for the fact that this isn't going to completely dismantle things and give us another level of rebuild more than we have in the first team squad. So that's that part over, and that was going to be just a wee bit of a soundbite at the communication section, and then it became a bigger thing. But one of the most important things that you'll genuinely remember from this particular pod, and as I say, it's the 3rd of June 2024 here, is what we're going to call a resolution to an ongoing investigation. It's been ongoing for some time now, actually, within NARSA, and I'm very happy to let you know that in the past 6 years we've finally got to a spot where we understand and know that BaconSuitGate was actually a thing. BaconSuitGate is actually a real, genuine, bona fide thing. For regular listeners to this podcast, you'll know for years I was saying there was a guy in Calgary in 2018 who had a bacon suit on at the banquet on Saturday night. And I got radio silence from everybody who ever listens to this across the world. And then in my family and friend circle here in Calgary, I'd have a conversation, and my line was always, why would I make that up? Why would I make up a bacon suit at the banquet on the Saturday night? Now, there's times at the conventions, and if anybody's met me at a convention, you'll probably maybe even have experienced one of those times. There's times at the conventions I like to enjoy myself. Some people would maybe say I like to over-enjoy myself. That's a matter of debate. We could talk about that another time. But my line to my family and friends here was like, why would I make that up? Why? Like, what would be the literal point of making that up? And why even in my subconscious would I come up with, you know what? I think there was a guy there with a bacon suit. I'm not trying to deflect from any dodgy behaviour from me, or bad behaviour, or over drinking, or stupid partying or whatever. There was just a guy there with a bacon suit on. It was a suit that had patterns of bacon on it. Am I making my point here? Well, just this morning, I woke up and my beautiful sister Debbie said, remember that time you said that there was a guy with a bacon suit and no one believed you? There's a guy called Rusty who came to the convention. He actually won the man of the match at the football tournament for being in goals for the rest of the world, I believe, and he posted a video of his memories. I don't know if it was on Instagram or TikTok or one of the social media platforms, but I got an image of the very beginning of the video, and here's a guy right in the very front of the video with a bacon suit on, with a suit with a bacon pattern on it. I'm talking about bacon as in from the animal, the pig. And then lo and behold, who's in the background giving a wee speech? Little Baldy here is in the background there. So completely conclusive evidence that BaconSuitGate is now, one, a gate, it is a gate, and two, the next time I tell you something, going to just believe me and then help me find out exactly who it was and where it was instead of just standing, pointing and laughing. Hashtag I was right, and I'm so glad to put that straight as we move into the remainder of the pod today. Winning. Gaz is winning. Validated. I feel validated. Can you tell with the passion in my voice? Anyway, on to the game segment for this last week, and you're probably saying, why is there a game segment for this past week if there was no Rangers games this past week? I just wanted to draw your attention to the kind of similarities that I experienced when I was watching the Champions League final on Saturday afternoon with Leo. Did anyone watch it? Did you watch it? I thought it was a brilliant game. And normally the finals are always a wee bit stuffy and kind of tense. The teams aren't really looking to lose and such. But it was like Borussia Dortmund were Rangers in disguise. Or the analogy, I guess you could say, was like Borussia Dortmund were like Rangers and Real Madrid were like that mob from the East End, because they should have, Borussia Dortmund I'm talking about now, should have at least been a couple of goals up at half time. They weren't. They then lose a goal from a set piece, and then they lose a second goal from sheer stupidity, a blind pass over to Bellingham. Bellingham passes it over, the boy kind of mishits it in, and it's 2-0, and that's their 15th Champions League trophy. So I say all that just to say, it's not just us. We don't have the exclusive rights on making a complete arse of a game with a pattern that you can kind of just tell is coming. Because it got to half time and I said to Leo, I think this is going to come back and bite them in the bum. And then it made me think about the amount of times that I've said that, especially even just last season there, with the amount of games that we did a very, very similar thing against them. And as I say, it happens at all levels and it happens to different teams as well. So yeah, just that's a wee part of the games segment for this past week. For RTV, I had some dialogue with Greg down in Big Apple Bears in New York City just yesterday, just asking for some logistics for the new season. We haven't actually gotten together with RTV yet. We will get together with them. Maybe I'll need to double check when David Melvin from RTV is going to be around. I suspect he might be on holidays now, but we'll get together with him when he's ready and available, myself and Alan, and we'll get around the table. We will review the season just past and we will talk about the season coming forward. I suspect the RTV individual vouchers would be somewhat similar to the previous season, to last season there, 23-24, but we'll get confirmation of what that looks like and see if there's any changes in delivery and broadcast partners and technology being used and login details and such. So we'll get that organised kind of early so that we don't have to scramble for that as we move closer to when the games actually restart again. On the shout-outs, I would just like to start from a shout-out perspective on the guys, the significant players from the Rangers first team squad who left the club at the conclusion of their contracts, which would have been Friday there, May the 31st. And the five, of course, were goalkeeper John McLaughlin, midfielder Ryan Jack, defender Borna Barisic, striker Kermar Roof, and midfielder John Lundstrom. It's obviously a shame that they couldn't have left us on a higher note, and a wee bit of a shame actually. I feel bad for them. They didn't get a chance to say a proper goodbye to us, but that's kind of what what happens at a club like ours of the stature of Rangers Football Club. If you're not successful in the moment, then in the moment we have zero room for sentiment. You just have to get out of the way and let us get on with trying to restore success. And we'll get an opportunity at some time in the future for sentiment and thank the guys properly for their service. I recall back to the previous season when it was Hollander and Morelos and Ryan Kent, and they kind of did I think, was it a midweek game at Ibrox? I think it was. I remember it being dark and it was just awkward, wasn't it? They're injured, of course, and they're just walking on and getting a wee wave, and we're not challenging for the titles. It's all a bit flat and stuff like that. So the club did something a wee bit different in terms of how they did the send-off, which I'll get to in just a wee bit here. But just going through each of them, McLaughlin I thought was a decent goalie and a good backup to Alan McGregor. In fact, in what turned out to be Alan McGregor's last season, he came in and had, 8 or 9 clean sheets in a row or something like that. He did a fantastic period, and then he had an absolute horror show at Shark Edge. You'll remember that, where I thought he was at fault for all of the goals, and when I see all of the goals, I think it was 4. Remember that, where he just passed it, like he just rolled it out to their player and stuff, and he never really recovered from that. I think he played him in the next game, and then that was maybe his last game for us, or certainly from a continuity and playing regularly. Process or perspective there. Jack and Roof were kind of similar to each other, and they were very effective for us when they were fit, but they just weren't fit enough over the time, and it just became a point where you just had absolutely zero faith that they were going to be available to give us any options as we were moving forward. Lundstrom had patches of brilliance and patches or perceived patches of indifference, and I don't think it was indifference in terms of how much he wanted to do well for the club. I just don't think he's as consistent a player as we need, and his skill set is not what we're looking for in terms of our midfield, in terms of our ability to be quick and transition of play quickly. That's just not his game, so it's difficult. It must be a difficult situation for him to receive criticism for doing things that he was never renowned to do, and he never came here to do. So it was kind of one of these things where we're down to such the bare bones last year that we were asking players to do things that were just a wee bit outside their comfort zone. And then Borna Barisic, I think Borna had just had confidence issues. I think we all seen that. He was up and down like a yo-yo. His demeanour was very similar all the time. You couldn't really see, like, physically his head going down, but he had some genuine confidence challenges there, which the fans get irritated by. We don't want that. There's so much help and support within the training centre that, he could get someone to help. I mean, I'm a performance coach. I could have helped him with that if he'd have just reached out to me at rangersscc@hotmail.com. That's 2 S's and 2 C's. But I could genuinely have helped him with that, to save this yo-yo of a life that he had with that. And as I say, over time, I think we're going to be able to look back on most of these guys, and their efforts for us was praiseworthy. I think my personal gauge is, in the future, would we be excited to see them at a NARSA convention? And I think that's, right now at least, it would only be Ryan Jack that I think we would have. I mean, when he was there, as I say, he was very, very effective for us, and we knew that he was playing for the jersey every time, and he was just a blue nose, so we appreciated that, liked that, enjoyed that. And I think for right now, of the 5, that's just the one that if we were to try and get him for Florida next, it's Florida, for Kissimmee in Florida next year, that it would go down quite well. Time is a great healer, folks, and we'll see how we feel about the rest of them over time here. And as I mentioned earlier there, Rangers did Cheerio videos. Thank you for the memories videos to 4 of the 5. I looked again today, honestly I did, and I couldn't find one for John McLaughlin, but they did one for Jack and Barisic and Roof and Lundstrom, and I don't know, that's a bit awkward, isn't it? I mean, you must have been able to compile a 1-minute video based on John McLaughlin's saves for us for the amount of games that he played, and I have no idea actually how many games he actually played. But they decided, no, he doesn't get. He doesn't. And maybe when the third choice goalie for any club leaves, they're not actually deserving of a video. But that's a wee bit awkward. I thought they could maybe have put something together for the guy, but maybe it would have just got ridiculed and it would have been more harm than it's worth. And some final news in terms of the shout-outs for this past week was, of course, that Liam Balogun has signed a 1-year extension. In general terms, we're looking to try and move on from the older players and give ourselves a bit of an opportunity to have younger, more dynamic players in the squad. But Liam Balogun's a class act. He's when he's fit and playing for us, he's a great player. He's a great influence on the club, and he speaks very, very well, and he'll probably be a great influence. In fact, Philippe Clement has actually said he's a great influence in and around the club, with the existing squad and with the younger players too. So it's great to see him sign on for 1 more year. And today we got effectively, the confirmation of a signing of Oscar Cortes signing a. Well, I guess it's a 1-year loan with the obligation to buy at the end of that loan period, and that becomes effectively a 5-year contract for him. I believe he's 20 right now, so a 5-year deal, no issue with that. The only issue is that he played, 7 or 8 games, and then he got himself injured, and then he hasn't played another game. So our Rangers signing yet another. After everything that we went through, are we signing yet another injured player? I hope not. The good news is that he did all his rehabilitation after his injury. He stayed in Glasgow. He didn't go back to France to do any rehabilitation there. So the doctors have been with him for the past, 4 or 5 months, something like that. And you see some of the videos on social media where he's been working hard and such. So he speaks well of the club. The club, what we've seen when he was there was great, and we could really have used him. Boy, could we have used him in the run-in to the Championship and Scottish Cup runs as well, and we just didn't have access to him. So hopefully he gets himself fit and really proves to be an absolute asset. I was wondering originally if the obligation to buy was something where there was still a little bit of a parachute or a get out of jail free element to that there, but my understanding is that there's actually not. Rangers do have an obligation. They must buy him at the end of the season, so it's in everyone's best interest that he does well. So maybe it's just a wee bit of a shell game when it comes to monies or a savings of money for this year, and investing heavier in the player from next year onwards. I'm not sure, but welcome aboard formally as our player now, and really looking forward to seeing what the young man can bring to us. On a more sombre note, I did want to pass on details of the unfortunate passing of NARSA stalwart Bobby Gilmour last Thursday, I believe it was. And I'd been in dialogue from a little bit earlier in the week from Ian Wilkie from the Big Apple Bears, who had messaged at the early part of last week saying that Bobby had taken a real turn for the worse and was in a bit of a bad way, and we were looking to try and correspond with Rangers actually to see if there was any chance we could get some contact with Bobby, or with Ian, to kind of be able to pass on to Bobby to kind of raise his spirits and give him the opportunity for a wee boost as he tried to kind of get over the last hurdle of his health challenges. And by the time Rangers had replied, I took that note, passed it straight on to Rangers, and by the time they replied, which was essentially within 24 hours, Bobby had sadly passed. His decline, unfortunately, was absolutely rapid as the week progressed, and we'd actually started a dialogue where Ian had went down and spent the cup final day with Bobby and watched it in his room, and went through the trials and tribulations of working through an Old Firm game from miles and thousands of miles away, and Ian was very concerned about him, and as I say, had a rapid decline there just last week and unfortunately passed. He was 75 and he'd been in South Florida for years, mainly working, I believe, in car dealerships. Mercedes was what was told to me, and then he built the Tudor Inn in 1992 or so, and that's when he joined up with NARSA, and essentially his affiliation and relationship with NARSA is basically history for then. Ian had met him around about that time when he heard about the games being shown, because Ian's wife's family has a house just south of the Tudor Inn there, and once again the rest is history. So you can see a bit of a history pattern forming here, can't you? And Bobby was also very helpful when Ian and co were setting up the Big Apple Bears, and the pub, because of its location and because of the way it was running, it was obviously a staunch Blue Nose bar there, became a meeting point for a lot of Rangers legends, Gorham McCoy, Willie Henderson, Donald Finlay even, remember him. And what Ian said to me, now this is Ian's words, this is not my words, if you all haven't heard the Gorham shite story, I can always send it later. Oh my god. So I have not heard that particular Gorham story, so I'm going to hit Ian up and see if I can get some details about that at some point. And if it's share worthy without being too on the edge, I'll share it in some future pod. And Bobby's daughter was visiting Scotland for the first time as an adult, actually, and had FaceTimed Bobby at half time during the final a couple of weeks back, or a week and a half ago there, from Glasgow, and he was delighted, and they spent of the time they got to spend together, they were trying to explain to her where to get Stornoway black pudding, as they always like to have a slab brought back as well. And Bobby was very, very popular with many ex-players. And he also had a friend in the late great Walter Smith as well. He played a lot of golf with Walter, both stateside and back home. And Ian also thought that at some point Walter had given Bobby a gold-plated club. I'd love to find out if that's true, as in a gold-plated golf club. And I'd love to find out if that's true, maybe even get a photograph of that at some point. Folks, I'm very well aware here that NARSA has had somewhat of a polarising effect on some people over the years, and I don't know that you can completely avoid that when you're dealing with essentially building a business model that was pioneering, genuinely, literally pioneering. What Tam Plunkett and Davy Murray and team did in the beginning was absolutely, most certainly ahead of its time. And then add into that we're talking about Rangers Football Club, that which even for the best of friends or the closest of families can be a real controversial issue, and that's certainly a controversial talking point, because everybody supports Rangers differently, and I've been saying that for many, many, many years. Here's the thing, I never once heard a bad word about Bobby Gilmour, not one, from anyone. He spoke his mind on any correspondence that was ever directed to me or to NARSA. He was always very polite, he was always very professional, he was always very friendly, and it all came across in a very, very supporting way. There was no controversy or anything with him. You could tell he was just trying to help and just do what he needed to do for the then Florida Rangers Supporters Club and for NARSA, and that's rare to have done that over such a long period of time. So I'd like to just take this opportunity to pass on our sincere condolences to everyone from NARSA, to Bobby's family and friends. That's a big loss, and it's just one of these things that just gives you another reminder of how fragile life is. And speaking of that, on the same note, Ian was also telling me about another NARSA stalwart, and that's Tam Seaton from the Florida area, and in particular that Tam has another bout of cancer to deal with, and Tam has not had his troubles to seek when it comes to the dreaded cancer. And I've met Tam on many occasions, and he's just a great guy. So if you're listening, Tam, I wish you nothing but the very best of luck in your latest battle, my friend. And as Ian said in his note, you're not called a legend for nothing. So by virtue of that, I look forward to seeing you and kissing me next year, my friend. And I will absolutely buy you a beer when I see you there. Oh dear. One last semi-sad one to go, and then we'll get on with the rest of the pod and get you folks on your way for this week. We did have a really good news story last week, actually surrounding the Cup final, where over the last wee while there was a plan for a bunch of guys to head over from London Rangers Supporters Club with Nicky Lyle, the official NARSA greeters, ashes, and take them and spread them somewhere poignant. There was a hope that we were going to get to spread them in Ibrox somewhere, or in or around Ibrox, and then ultimately they had an opportunity to spread them just kind of at the back corner, close to one of the entrances of Ibrox. But four guys had taken the ashes on pilgrimage. We managed to get them tickets for the Cup final. I'm not 100% sure if they took Nicky with them to the Cup final or not. I would like to think that they did, but if they didn't, that would be completely understandable as well. But they did the big man proud, and they did a fantastic job. So congratulations and thank you to Dave Shillinglaw and his band of merry blue noses over there for doing that, and giving Nicky a very, very poignant resting place to be able to look over his beloved Ibrox and have Claire be able to give a wee nod over in his direction every time she goes in to look at her wonderful team, or to watch her wonderful team, I should say. One last shout out for this week, and it's just a reminder of Toronto Midtown's Cultural Night with the Pride of the Birches Accordion Band, of course from Portadown, Northern Ireland, and that's July the 19th, which is next month now, and that's a 7pm start, no cover charge, but please do email tmrsc1998@outlook.com to reserve your spot so that you don't miss out there. And of course that's going to be in Gatherings Resto Bar, which is at 49 St Clair Avenue, actually, west in Toronto. On to the convention update for this week, and I can officially confirm that it's 374 days and 53 weeks. So that's like in a couple of weeks, it's less than a year, folks. Oh my word. And that's until we descend upon Kissimmee in Osceola County in Florida. That's of course the 12th to the 15th of June at Omni Orlando at Champions Gate, 1500 Masters Boulevard, Champions Gate, Florida. And as I mentioned over the last couple of weeks, we're still in the process of considering and pricing out entertainment options for the Friday night, as we're not going to be progressing with a flute band for this particular convention, and we'll just be working on something else that's going to be staunch. It's going to be absolutely Rangers related. It's just not going to be a flute band. And I believe we should be meeting with Rangers delegation this week and on Wednesday morning. I believe I wasn't 100% sure if we were meeting last week or not, and we ended up not. And I'm just not 100% sure if they're actually around this week. And the last thing I'm not 100% sure about is if the happenings of last week with James' departure and anything else that becomes essentially collateral fallout from that, whether they will have time to meet with us, whether this week is the right time to meet or not, because I'm sure things are going to be a little bit nutty over there for a wee while. So if we get an opportunity to meet them this week, that will be fantastic, and we'll get an opportunity then to tell you all about what the outputs of that were, and if not, then I'll just update you on that next week, and we'll hopefully plan for meeting them next week. The hotel rooms, just another reminder, are formally out for sale now, and I would really encourage you, we do have the link to that in the show notes for the pod. I would encourage you to go there and get them booked, especially if you're looking to book before and after, because there's very limited before and after bookings available. And just a reminder, it's $199 for a standard room per night plus 14.5% tax, which is roughly about $29 or so it's about $228 a night. It's not Canadian, sorry, US dollars. And just another important reminder, they will take a first night deposit and put that deposit on your credit card as well. So that has been a little bit of a bone of contention for some. So I don't want to pull the wool over your eyes or tell you anything that's not true. If you're willing to part with that money and get yourself booked there, we would thoroughly appreciate it. It gives us an idea of what the interest is going to look like. We are going to be working here shortly on the actual event ticket prices and get them priced up accordingly, appropriately, and then get moving on that too. So you should see something about that over the next wee while, and then we'll pick a proper spot of time to get that out and into the market, so to speak. So what I was thinking about was in terms of ongoing engagement for the summer here. Obviously we've got the Euros and we'll have an opportunity to kind of continue to at least feel a bit of football, and then of course Rangers friendlies and the qualifiers and such will come up fairly quickly on the back of the Euros. But what I thought we could do is a wee segment where I'm calling it kind of NARSA Convention Stories, where if you have any memories that you'd like to share, as in you'd like me to read out on your behalf at some point on any future pod at any time, it doesn't have to be in the summer. I just thought it would be good from an ongoing community and engagement perspective. Just give us your story. Was it your first convention? Was it your last convention? What your experiences were? Was there a poignant moment with a VIP? Was there something specific about the location that became very impactful for you, or such a memory for you? Did you have too many alcoholic sensations which led to some sort of hilarity? Did you go somewhere that you weren't supposed to be? Did you sleep in for something you were supposed to be at? Anything poignant that you'd like to share, keep it clean as much as you can, folks, and try not, if you can, try not embarrass anyone, especially if your story involves multiple people. But That would be kind of funny as well. So any NARSA convention stories that you'd like to share, please, 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 by all means, send them over. And you can send them to me directly at rangersscc@hotmail.com. That's 2 S's and 2 C's, remember. And I'll include them, and we'll see if we can get some banter going here. Literally, thousands and thousands and thousands of people have attended the NARSA conventions over the years. So even if you've heard of the story, you weren't directly involved, that would qualify, and we could do a wee bit more investigation and see if we can get a bit of banter coming from that. So I'd love to hear from you, and if not, I'll share one from next week onwards, and just to get a bit of momentum going. But I'll try and impress upon our NARSA group chat and such to share some stories on that as well, and then put it in a bit of a queue, and then we'll get one story per week going. So let the games begin. On another business section here, we have just a reminder that we do have the AGM on the 15th, and that's at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's going to be virtual, it's going to be on Zoom, so please, please, please attend. I know I said this last week, I'll say it next week as well. It's in between the second and third games of the Euros. You're not going to miss any of the games if you're sitting there on the couch or in the pub or wherever you're going to be. And we would really appreciate if we can at least get a quorum of member clubs here, and just come along, support us, listen to what we're doing, listen to where we're going, give us any guidance, opinions, advice, or anything of a progressive nature, and just see what we're doing. We really, really need your help on this one. So please, it's going to be no more than an hour, absolutely, and you can spare an hour on a Saturday afternoon, please, so that we can go through all of the reports and we can just talk about our planning for 2025 and see where that takes us. Okay, really looking forward to seeing everyone then. On the communication section, we're almost there, folks. There's no Gers guide this week on the website. I guess I'm just going to do that during the season, but there was one article I did want to draw your attention to, and it's entitled Rangers Ticketing System Migration Update, and it's from a week past. Actually, do you know what? It's from last Thursday, the 30th of May is when the article was posted, and essentially Rangers are moving to a new, more modern, appropriate ticketing platform. So the existing platform is going to be down and the new one will be up. In fact, it might be up by the time you listen to this, quite honestly, but there's going to be an opportunity to experience the new platform for anything that you're buying directly from Rangers going forward, and my understanding is it's going to be a much, much better experience. And just on that as well, MyGers, if you haven't subscribed to MyGers and you're a typical MyGers, a regular MyGers purchaser, then the early bird deadline for MyGers is this coming Sunday, which is of course the 9th of June. So the new platform should be up, if it's not already, by midweek this week, and then you get plenty of time to still get the benefits of the early bird. And I don't actually even know what the early bird is. I don't know if it's a discounted price or there's maybe an extra prize in there or something. Forgive me for that, but I just wanted to highlight the date to you so that you knew that was coming up if you just didn't want to miss out on that and it had maybe just slipped your mind. Quick reminder for each club, please look at your page on the website, and if any updates are required, please pass them on to either Lorraine or Sandra, and we'll get those updates made over the summertime here. I keep talking about this Euro pool, and the more I talk about it, the less confident I am that we're actually going to be able to make it happen. We do have a NARSA executive meeting on the 11th. That's a week tomorrow, where we're going to talk about things, and that will be no doubt an opportunity for us to talk about that then. I do have a volunteer to run it from the NARSA exec side, and Bobby Jameson is absolutely committed to doing it if we can. So maybe I'll try and connect with Sandra over the next couple of days and give you a bit of an update on that. But the more time goes on, the more I'm starting to feel it might not happen, folks. And I do apologise about that if you were looking forward to that, but we'll see. It's not an absolute no, but it hasn't really gained any momentum other than me just talking about it. Another interesting thing from last week, artificial pitches are going to be banned within 2 years for Premiership teams, and of course Kilmarnock are the only team who now have an artificial pitch in the Premiership after the relegation of Livingston, and I believe Wraith has one, but they didn't get promoted. And apparently Kelly are in the process of replacing that anyway, so this would be the last year they had it. Not 100% sure if that's true or not, but maybe it is. So within a couple of years, we don't get to blame the dodgy plastic pitches for any dodgy results that come our way. So more of a level playing field, if you pardon the pun on that one. And on the NARSA newsletter last week, we posed the quiz question: in the 1972 European Super Cup, Rangers played Ajax home and away. Which Rangers players scored in both matches? And of course, I knew this right off the top of my head, as per usual. The correct answer was Doddy himself, Alex McDonald, who scored in both matches. One last quick thing I had to ask you. I know we're going a wee bit long in this pod this week. You can blame BaconSuitGate for that one, and maybe Rangers for for the little bit of a stramash incident that we had in the boardroom last week there. But I did want to get some feedback from you on what you thought about the interview with David Holmes. I know that the audio was a wee bit kind of fraught at sometimes, a wee bit difficult to make out, but just with some adjustments to the volume, you could hopefully make out everything that was going on. But did you enjoy the interview? Did that inspire you to purchase a copy of the book? I hope it did, because it's a fantastic book and it's a real significant, poignant moment in our history. But if you didn't enjoy it, even, I'd love to hear from you. A lot of times, this push communications that I do, I'm just kind of talking to a microphone here, and I don't know whether it's actually landing or not. So I'd really love to any feedback at all that you've got about the interview and or your intention to purchase a book. I'd love to hear. And one of the main reasons I'm asking that is, one, because I genuinely want to know, and two, Mr. Holmes wants to know as well. That was when we went off air. He said, well, you let us know how it goes and what people thought. So I would love to be able to pass that information back on to him. Okay, my friends, that's a wee bit of a longer one for this week, which is weird when there's no games to talk about. But that will do it for this week, my friends. As always, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you very, very, very much for taking the time to listen. And let's just see what this week brings in terms of any further moves. Let's call them moves at the club. And until next week, please do take care of yourself and all the very best. Okay, cheerio on out.